Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the weekend review with Celtic Down Under. I'm your host tonight, Paul Massey, standing in for the missing Anthony Maguire, who's hobnobbing in Italy, ready for the Italian Grand Prix. Half his luck. Despite that, and it's a Monday, pretty good, decent spring in my step today. It's not often we get connected with a left back signing for Celtic and an Oasis reunion imminent at the same time. So suffice to say, a man of my years is very excited by these things, and I'm excited with the panel we've got together tonight. We've got a couple of guests who you may recognize if you've been around Celtic Down Under for a little while. We've got firstly joined by Shane Beaton, up late at night in in Melbourne, and he's moonlighting across from the Pot Noodle. I will get to you in a minute, Shane. And delighted to have the returning prodigal son, Sean Connolly, back on the show. It's been a little while. How are you doing, Sean? Good to see you.
Yeah, getting there, getting home, mate. Just pretty busy with life, work, all that sort of stuff. Eating into my time, apologies. Yeah, shouldn't complain. Healthy.
We've been good, man. And we've been seeing you in Axum, so nice to see you coming back to our show as well. You're very welcome.
Match days with Axum.
Good stuff. So you'll be well primed for tonight. And Shane, as I said, bit of a late one for you in Melbourne. It's 10:30 with you. How's your day been? How are you feeling, mate?
Oh, firstly, pleasure to be with you, fine gentlemen. Even though it's late on this side of the eastern seaboard of Australia, it's always good to catch up with you both and chat all things Celtic. So thanks for having me on board. Been really good. Had been sort of unwell leading up to last weekend, but started to get better and was well enough to head out to Geelong, which is about an hour's trip away from Melbourne, to catch the final game of the AFL season for the Eagles. And it was a beautiful day, lovely trip down to Geelong. Everything apart from the 3 hours of football, and it was fantastic. That 3 hours was completely miserable, though. So season's over for us now, and 100 points down at half time. So that was impressive.
Yeah. Eagles didn't make the journey, did they? What happened to their flight? They get cancelled?
I was there. I don't think they were there until after halftime, put it that way.
Yeah. And the other team for Perth didn't do too well either. They managed to conspire to lose 4 games on the spin and drop out of the playoffs. So Freo fans will be feeling that as well. But we're here to talk real football and not Aussie rules. I'll start with come on, Shane. Come on.
Careful.
It's the world game. That's what we're here to discuss.
I'm a guest on this program. Careful.
So let's chat. Let's first off get into the game, and before that, we'll do what we always do. We'll sort of touch on the lineup. Any surprises for you in terms of the starting 11 and just how the bench looked and the like, and what were your thoughts pre-match? Shane.
Is that to me? Shane.
I was always of the opinion that Ida was going to come in at some point and start, and that Rogers was going to start to get minutes in him. And the question to me was more, well, who's going to drop out if we play him up front? Is Maeda going to keep a spot in the starting 11, or is he going to drop back down to the bench and we're going to have the likes of Forrest and Kun on the wings? And so it probably panned out as I expected, to be honest, which was Ida comes in and leads the line, and then Maeda takes a spot on the left. And unfortunately for Kun, who's been in tremendous form, he takes a spot on the bench because Forrest is also, despite necessarily the output difference, has also been very good. So for me, it kind of panned out exactly as I thought it would pre-match in terms of the lineup.
Anything to add, Sean?
Well, I was surprised to see Kun out of the team, but I gather that was injury related. So that was the main surprise to me. He's been on fire, and even when he came off the bench, he did end up with an assist. So yeah, apparently he's only trained on the Saturday or the Friday. He'd only trained one day that week. So that was the main surprise to me. And as Shane said, no other real surprises. Kyogo coming back from injury as well. Ida looked rusty. It took him about 12 minutes to even get his first touch. So yeah, I mean, other than that, it picked itself.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I was surprised. I think the The news about Coonan, I think it's a bit of a back injury and just managing that. That wasn't really, I don't think it was in the public domain until sort of post-match. So yeah, people were, that sort of caught most of us by surprise. And you're right, I think as good as the wide men have been, I think without that knock, and probably he's looking ahead to next weekend, I think he probably would have got the nod, and Forrest would have probably dropped to the bench. But as it turned out, he was able to contribute later in the match. We'll just jump quickly onto stats before we get too much further into the match, because there's something to speak about quite early. So the overall stats were 76.1% possession to us. I think that was as high as 80% early in the game. Probably St Mirren got a bit more of that second half, I would have thought. Shots 21-3, on target 8-1, shots off target 5, blocked shots 8-2, touches in the box 48 touches for Celtic inside St Mirren's box, and only 9 in our box, which I think heavily tells the tale of the match. They had 5 saves. Kasper Schmeichel had 1 routine save. 12 fouls to them, 7 to us, 10 corners there too. So really, the stats say it was a total dominance, and I don't think any of us would argue with that, would we?
No, and the stat you're talking about with Kasper Schmeichel making the save, I believe that's his first save in the league. I know he had one against Hibs in the Cup, but I think that's his first actual league save. The stats, the foul stat count is interesting as well, because there's a lot of times where we end up with the higher foul count just because we're such a hard pressing team. But yeah, I guess it also reflects just how much we had the ball, and I guess it also reflects the kind of that we were playing with a bit of dare and urgency to be drawing those fouls from St Mirren. So I think it just does show the urgency that we played with, which is not really something that has its own dedicated statistic, if you will.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Sean. Shane, do you want to talk us through the goal? Nothing, other than us having a bit of the ball, there wasn't too much had happened by the time the ball ended up in the back of the net. So 2.5 minutes in, I think, which is the fastest goal we've scored this season, and we've been scoring them pretty early. Do you want to talk us through the opener?
Yeah, so it's a good bit of build-up play. I thought we looked okay, despite the fact that not much had necessarily come of it in terms of output or sort of end product, if you want to call it that. But it starts on the left, moves itself out to the right. AJ gets it out wide. He makes a run into the box. Forrest has got the ball on the edge of the box, looking to cut inside. Forrest, very direct, was looking pretty dangerous early on. And you're sort of looking for something to happen. And then just as Forrest has got the ball on the edge of the box, Johnson's made a run inside to drag the defender away. But the actual piece that I wanted to highlight in that first goal was actually the small run that Bernardo makes just on the edge of the box. He sort of makes this sort of deviated run just across Forrest, which kind of drags Gogic out of position, just a fraction. But it's enough to get Kalmak. It's enough to open up a really good passing lane for Jamesy to find Kalmak, and then enough for Kalmak to have a really good shot on goal, a clear shot on goal. And he pegs at bottom right-hand corner. So really tidy finish from Kalmak, who's looked pretty energetic this season in comparison to this time last season. I think international retirement suiting him. And it was good bit of build-up play, which I thought we were actually doing pretty well at anyway, despite the fact we hadn't actually created anything necessarily on target. But just the I guess how in sync the team was to get the ball to Forrest, for Johnson to make that run to drag the defender. But really the key part for me is that little Bernardo run, which just opens it up for Kalmak to ping it. And it's a really tidy finish. And he's got another, I don't think it'll win it, but it's another goal of the year contender, let's be honest.
I think that's... Really sorry, Paul. I was just going to. I agree with Shane there that something that's been very noticeable in our first 4 games is the movement off the ball, and Shane's called a specific moment there about it, and I totally agree. That has been impressive so far.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I agree with the Bernardo little run is what sort of opens up all the space, as little as it was. He just runs across and tucks in behind Forrest, and just as he moves across Gogic's eye line, he takes one step back towards Forrest and away from the space that Callum McGregor is going to find himself in. And then, that allows him to get a touch out of his feet. And then he's there's no one else close enough. Gogic was the only man, and he sort of shifted his balance. So it's not right in the corner. I think the keeper probably might be a little bit disappointed he didn't get a stronger hand on it, but he's hit it so hard and quick that he gets down, but he's not keeping it out. So yeah, it's another cracking strike, and yeah, inside 3 minutes, happy days. We've started like a steam train most of the season, and even preseason as well, and it's just kept it going. And a game that could be a bit of a on paper could be a struggle. They're going to be physical. They're going to throw the ball into the box. The longer it goes, the harder it potentially gets. It just takes all the pressure off early on, and we just push on from there and continue to dictate the play. And really from there, I think we just build dominance. We hunted in pack. When we didn't have the ball, we hunted in packs. We looked super hungry to win it back. We were in people's faces, winning the ball back. And pretty early, it's clear that we're trying to find Ida early. He's running the channels. We're looking to AJ was finding him regularly with a sort of curve ball over the top. Hatate had a brilliant sort of first time hit on his weaker side that put him in. And potentially we could have been further ahead prior to that. And look, Mahesh is making really, really good points here around Hatate stepping up. And obviously a lot of people concerned about Matt O'Reilly's absence. I'm not being flippant. I don't think Matt O'Reilly was missed at all in yesterday's game. And that's a pretty big statement given how good a player he is and the form he's been on. And he is going to be missed to the squad. But as far as yesterday's game goes, it was seamless. Hatate stepped his game up. Bernardo came in and played really well. And yeah, that the midfield just continued to function well as it has done. Sean, any additional thoughts around that?
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to cover it, if your plans cover it later, but Rodgers had mentioned in his post-match that the 3 goals came from the pre-match tactic was with the, and again, this is not something I was aware of, despite I feel that I have quite a broad football knowledge. Rodgers stated, obviously, and I think he used the word obviously when you're up against a 3-man defence or back 5, you have to play on the switch, and we got all 3 goals from switches. So that tactic worked well for us. And I was kind of, is that a thing that is general football knowledge, that you have to play a switch against a back 5? Anyway, so he made the point that this was not accidental. This was a pre-planned tactic to do, and we executed it well. The only other thing I would add is the first 2 goals in particular, and Callum McGregor's in particular, I think there was a lot of bodies there, and I think the goalkeeper's unsighted. So I think McGregor and Hatate have done well to guide those shots through bodies, and Alison Johnson also to a lesser extent.
Yeah, the other, before the sort of, there's just general dominance, and we've touched on sort of getting Ida in dangerous positions multiple times. I think prior to the second goal, the pasture play I wanted to highlight was at about 12 minutes-ish. There was really good link-up play through the midfield, which eventually gets Hatate inside the box, and he has a snapshot. He's arriving late, and he strikes it. Good save by the keeper. Then AJ's following in, and he has a kind of half-scuffed shot that gets partly blocked. And then Ida has probably his best chance of the game, and probably just snatches at it a wee bit and make the keeper straight at the keeper basically, and he manages to block it. Now, I don't know if you guys were watching on either Celtic TV or Sky or the equivalent, so what commentary stream you're getting, but I was on Celtic TV, and they made quite a big deal about the fact that Ida would have been offside if that goal had gone in. Now, Sean's the resident ref, so he'll correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure he'd have been onside, because he's offside when Hatate hits it. By the time AJ hits it, he's onside, and then it breaks to him, and he has to strike a goal. So I'd say you can be offside if you're not interfering, and then get yourself back onside and be involved in the second phase. And I think it is a second phase, but you tell me,
that's the question. Is that a first or second phase? That's what it comes down to. And because it was largely academic, I didn't give it too much thought, but I do remember that what you're specifically talking about. My feeling was it would have been called for offside based on it being a single phase of play. For me, the mitigation would have been if a Kilmarnock, St Mirren, if a St Mirren player had a chance at controlling it, that then becomes not an offside at that point, not an offside offence. My personal, again, quick viewing, academics, I didn't give it too much second thought, was that it would have been offside.
Cool, thanks for the clarity. And then, yeah, so there's generally, and we'll come on to individual player performances in a little bit, so we won't touch too much on Edel right now, even though he had quite a lot of involvement in that first 15-20 minutes, half an hour. Sean, do you want to talk us through the second goal?
Yeah, and I can talk about the penalty decision, penalty calls if you want as well.
Yeah, I'm going to chat penalties all together later on. So we'll do that, and yeah, obviously with the ref in the background, we'll cover. We'll get your thoughts. I was going to get Shane's layman's view first on the penalties, and we'll come to you later. But yeah, let's just get into this goal first, and we'll cover them probably later in.
Yeah,
the second.
I was just going chronologically, but yes, the second goal, about 33 minutes, Hatate, as you guys touched on earlier, Hatate absolutely stepped up and took over the mantle of the chief creative playmaker and apparently goal scorer as well, which is not something he's unknown for, but it's something that usually Matt O'Reilly takes on more. And I did think about it, like, there was the time where he scores those 2 goals against Lazarus FC, and we thought we've got a real goal scoring threat in our hands here, and then he kind of dropped off a little bit after that and became more of a more dynamic player rather than a goal scorer. But it might be coming back to that. He might be taking over Matt O'Reilly's mantle, so we'll find out. But it's a great crossfield ball from Alistair Johnson. Maeda runs in behind, which he's great at as well. I think that's really his natural kind of movement, to move off the fullback. Even when we had him up front against Hibs, we saw that he was drifting out there, even when he was a striker. And there was times where Forrest ended up more central, even though Maeda was the nominated striker. So Maeda did his natural movement, and then it's a great knockdown for Hatate, and it's just a sensational finish. Like, the goalkeeper barely moves because it's just so fast, so far away from him. Daisy cutter in off the post. There's just no keeper in the world can save it, and it's a sensational finish, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a cracking goal. Shane, additional thoughts?
Oh, I just wanted to wax lyrical about the finish, really. Rewatching that again today, he catches that so well. That's not at an easy height. That's very easy to get wrong, to either scuff it, slice it, or even put it over the bar. He hits it perfectly, and I couldn't help but revel in just how good a finish it was. Completely agree with Sean with the build-up play and the ball from AJ and the knockdown from Maeda, but just that finish was tremendous. And if we see more of that, oh man, we're in for one hell of a season.
Not bad on his swinger, right? So he's naturally right-footed. He's such a good 2-footed player, though. Like, when he was, looking really good in that sort of 60-odd minutes against Real Madrid at Celtic Park the other season, and he's pinging crossfield passes off both feet on the volley and half volley. Like, if you can get like, and he started like a steam train, if you can get that form consistently, that is really one of the ways that we are going to mitigate the loss of Matt O'Reilly, because everybody talks about how good a season Matt had last year, and he did, but he was sort of carrying a heavy burden because Hatate only played about half the league games last season. So, and he was very stop-start until sort of March when he came back. So he was getting dropped for Turnbull early in the season. Then he got his injury. So yeah, without using the whole "he's like a new player" cliche, it almost is going to be a real addition to the team, and if he can stay fit and really push on. The only thing I was going to say is, like, that you're spot on about the knockdown from Maeda. When at first watch, I was like, that's pretty lucky it's landed in that area and Hatate's coming onto it. But I was watching it back again today, and I really thought he actually, out of the corner of his eye, saw him and sort of managed to sort of twist his neck to direct it back into that area. So definitely giving Maeda credit for the knockdown. I thought it was really good, and yes, running in behind's perfect. I'm going to roll all the penalties together, and we'll chat about them when we're in the middle of the second half stuff, because there's obviously 3 across 2 halves to chat about. I guess the only thing I would want to say about the first half was realistically we should have been further ahead than just the 2 at half time. Like, if we get that third goal, the game's done and dusted, and we just don't quite convert. But it's probably as dominant a first half as you'll see in a long time. Is that fair?
Yeah, and obviously we've had a few in a row now, like of dominant first halves, and I wonder, last season the games where we failed to score early were the games we struggled, and in 4 games now out of 4 we've scored early, so we're absolutely rolling. And I wonder what's going to happen on the day where things just don't break our way and we fail to score in the first half hour, and I wonder how we're going to react to that adversity, if you will, when we're not getting that early goal.
Yeah, I think for me, it is definitely something that's been a little bit of a pattern, is that we have performed tremendously well across pretty much all of our first halves in both the seasons and the cup games so far. But I think the one thing that is a little bit apparent is probably at halftime in most of those games we could have been out of sight and we haven't been. I think that's a small negative, in all honesty. I don't think it's something that's anything we need to get too hung up on. But Sean's right. There is going to be a game where it doesn't fall our way and the shots don't go in, and we might go to halftime dominating, but the scoreline reads 0-0. And how are we going to react to that? Are we going to have the mettle to come out in the second half and do what we need to do and be patient, or continue to push instead of going back into our shell? So, look, there will come a time. Hopefully, it's not this coming weekend, but there will come a time, and we've got to make sure we deal with it properly. But I just wanted to comment, just in regards to that first half performance and what we've seen so far in the other games, is just how much of how stark the contrast is to this time last season, and how much more enjoyable we are to watch, and how much more in sync our front third and even our midfield trio look together. There's a much better cohesiveness, and we sort of talked about it with the first goal, but come last season, we had a lot of question marks. We were wondering what was happening. We were wondering why we were so patient. We were wondering why everything seemed so static. We don't really have those concerns. And so I've just wanted to sort of emphasize how much more enjoyable it has been watching us so far this season in comparison to last.
Yeah, there's definitely been a clear shift, which, given the personnel's pretty much identical, it's definitely the time on the training pitch, and something's clicked, obviously, with players in that shift from one manager to the next. So we saw a bit of it towards the end of last season, and it's definitely gone up a level from pre-season and into the start of the new campaign.
I mean, you say it's identical, but it is. But then also 1 year ago, we had Lagerbielke and Nawrocki starting together at centre back against Kilmarnock, and you had Odin Holmes starting in midfield that day as well. So as much as the personnel are still the same, there's some players that were injured at the time. And
yeah, that's true.
I think that it betrays the lack of depth and quality that we had and still have, how vulnerable we were to injuries last year. And you would assume we'll remain vulnerable unless we improve that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fair point. So that took us to halftime, 2-0, pretty comfortable. Job not quite done, but well on the way. St Mirren make a couple of changes second half or over halftime, kind of not really a surprise. And they came out of the traps and seemed to have an instruction to be more aggressive, which is pretty interesting when they're a pretty aggressive side anyway. But yeah, get in our faces a bit more, press higher up the pitch, try and rattle us and win some possession. So I thought there was definitely a sort of change in how the game flowed a little bit, but I thought we stood up well to that attempt to sort of put us under pressure, and we played pretty comfortably through the press, was my view. Thoughts, guys, on the sort of opening sort of 10-15 minutes of the second half? Che?
Yeah, no doubt there was a shift from St Mirren at halftime. And the one thing I'd say that I noticed is they had more presence. In that first half, we were playing through them with relative ease. They had no midfield presence whatsoever, and that definitely changed after halftime. They were trying to make it more difficult for us to play through. But as you said, Paul, I thought there was a slight shift. I thought we were more patient in terms of our build-up. I thought we were a little bit more careful, but we didn't exactly revert back to what we'd seen in seasons gone by, where we were too static. We were just a bit more careful, but as you said, we were still playing through the lines. And when I rewatched the highlights today, I was surprised by how many chances we actually did create in the second half. I thought that they actually exerted a little bit more control than I properly remembered. And when we were still able to, as you articulated, get the ball forward and actually create something. So as much as they sort of put up a little bit of a roadblock for us overall, I still think we dealt with it relatively comfortably.
Yeah, I think literally that we talked briefly about Kasper Schmeichel's only save in the league this season. And it was about as routine as it gets. They shifted the ball, quite well. They got a man. I think AJ tried to do a sliding tackle on sort of the break of the ball, dropped over, and one of their sort of attacking players looked like he might get in, but then cover came back, slowed him up. He put his foot on the ball, had to decide where he was going to. Eventually it recycles from right to left. And there's a strike from distance, and it's about as straightforward a save as you're likely to see. And really that was it. To be fair, actually, we should have touched on, there was one chance that was potentially threatening in the first half, which they flashed the ball in across the box, and Scales did really well and sort of read it and got ahead of his man and got a really good block on it. He could have deflected off him and in, or off him and off an attacker and in, or he could have not quite got there, and the attacker pretty much had a tap in. So regular viewers will know I've at times been slightly critical of Liam Scales, but credit where it's due. He really read the danger there and got himself in the right position, and I thought he had a good game all around, to be honest. Yesterday, not that our defence was put under too much pressure, but those were, as far as I can remember, those were only sort of two fake chances that were created, and obviously one was a block and one was a routine save. I don't think they created too much else, did they?
They had a penalty shout that was like just from the crowd, really, because it didn't even touch Callum McGregor's hand.
The chested it down, keeper kicked it up. Yeah. Well, before we get on to the third goal, let's touch on penalties. Since Sean circled us back to penalty shouts, there was two in the first half in quick succession involving Daisa Miera, and then there was one in the second half with a sort of body check on Callum McGregor as he was moving through the box at a dangerous point. Shane, we'll take them one by one, and I'll start with you and I'll come to Sean at each time. And then if there's anything worth adding from me, I'll chip in, but you boys will probably cover it. First one, Maeda sort of makes the go in past the fullback, and there's definitely contact, and then he's down. Thoughts on the first one?
I thought the. Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna go layman expert in each occasion.
It's always happened when there's a Shane and a Sean. It's very easy for this to kind of happen, but only one of us is a trained official, and it's not me. I'll put it out there. I couldn't. When you said there was three, I could remember two, and I was like, what was the third one? And this was the one I was forgetting. I can't remember this very well in my mind. I think from recollection, there was like a tangle of legs and Maeda went down or something like that. The defenders basically got his leg in near him or in front of him, tried to win the ball, and he's tangled him up. I can't remember an awful lot of it. I remember thinking at the time, and judging from the fact I didn't put it in the plethora of notes I have, that I mustn't have taken it that seriously. So I'm going to say that I initially considered it no penalty, but this is the one that I couldn't remember very well off the top of my head. Yeah, so I'm going to defer very heavily to yourself and Sean on this one.
It didn't get a lot of repeat viewings. I think we might have seen one replay. And I know Simon Donnelly was a bit like, no, I'm not sure. So I think it was generally one of those that it would have been pretty soft. But Sean, you want to give me your thoughts?
The first one, I think, is not a penalty. I think it's more of a kind of coming together, incidental contact. Yeah, he's kind of brought him down in a sense, but I don't think it was an unfair challenge, and I don't think he's committed a foul in that sense. But the reverse, I would say, of that is if the referee has given a penalty, I think there's enough ground there that VAR doesn't overturn it. And as for the second, Maeda one, I actually think he should have awarded the penalty in that instance. The defenders extended a leg, and he's caught it in between Maeda's legs and essentially tripped him up by by putting his leg in between Maeda's leg, and he's not won the ball in that action either. If he wins the ball in that action, it's a different issue, and it's probably not a penalty at that point because it's not an unfair challenge in that aspect. But I'm also content that if this is the standard of non-intervention we're getting from VAR, then I am happy with that in that sense. So first one, my opinion, not a penalty. Second one, in my opinion, a penalty. In both cases, I'm happy that VAR didn't intervene and they left it as umpire's call, if you will. The third one in Callum McGregor's a nothing burger. There was just nothing in that. McGregor's running, the guy's standing his ground. If the defender moves in any way to block Callum McGregor, that's an obstruction and a penalty. But he's just standing and McGregor runs into him. That's not an obstruction. When McGregor's already released the ball, there's nothing in that one to me.
Shane, any different thoughts on any of those?
I agree with the Calmac one. Yeah, I looked at that one and I don't think the St Mirren defender made any kind of concerted effort to go out of his way to knock him or block him. I thought that was just a coming together and I was okay with that one not being awarded. I didn't really see that as a pen. Definitely the Maeda one with the kick. I thought that was a pen. So I agree with Sean. And I think one of the key aspects to this is, and I highlighted in one of the comments before, I'll just bring it back up for discussion. I think Maeda, I'm not saying this should be the be-all and end-all, but I think Maeda actually staying on his feet and not making anything more of it actually probably, to a degree, impacts that not being given, or at least not being taken for a second look. Now, I know, it probably shouldn't. It needs to be the action as opposed to the outcome. But I couldn't help but look at that and go, you know what, if he falls over, if he goes down there, I reckon that's at least getting a second viewing.
Yeah, as a referee, it's really hard to judge the level of contact, and you almost are relying on the player's reaction and other players around him reaction. Maybe even a defender going any kind of body language or anything like that. Sometimes to judge how much impediment has been caused.
Yep. Yeah, I take the point on the lack of intervention being probably on the balance a better thing, Sean, but my view is I think it's a stonewaller. Like he hangs a leg, he trips him, and he's down. But because he's so eager to get on the end of the ball, he gets himself back up and off he goes. I'm really shouldn't be shocked about the incompetence of referees. I'm really surprised that the on-field decision wasn't a penalty. And then at that point, you're not going to reverse that decision in the VAR room because there's definitely
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So rather than we talked a lot about VAR last season, and I think we'll all be pleased if we talk about VAR less. What I think happened last season is referees were happy not to make decisions because VAR was so heavily involved. The game was effectively being re-refereed. If this is the kind of hands-off approach VAR is going to take, well, the onus is back on referees to do their job properly, because
as it should be. Yeah.
But I think having had a season of not having to do their job properly because VAR was happy to sort of get heavily involved and fix every mistake. If we're not going to be doing that, then referees need to be back on it. And I think it was a glaring error yesterday, to be honest. But that said, and we should highlight these things in matches where it doesn't make a difference, because there will be potentially matches where it does make a difference. But yeah, we were comfortable. A couple of changes on the hour. Kyogo comes on for Ida. Nicholas Kuhn comes on for James Forrest. And then Kuhn, as we touched on earlier, had a really kind of key part to play in the last goal. Either of you want to grab this one?
I'll leave it. Sure. Go for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Kuhn, he draws men out. I think we saw the exact same thing. I can't remember, was it Hibs or one of the Hibs games? I don't remember which one, where he draws out so many players. I think it was the Callum McGregor goal against Hibs, where so many players are drawn to Kuhn that it kind of creates the space inside. And so in my concern for Kuhn playing against these low blocks was like, he's a fast, apparently counter-attacking player, but he's also got skill. So when he draws these players out to him, he is creating space inside, and we saw that again. And that's what's happened here, is he's created that space for Alistair Johnson to run into. So I think I've read a stat on Twitter, and I've no idea if it's true or not, that Kuhn is now on like a goal contribution because he's had 3 goals and 2 assists. So he's on a goal contribution every 40 something minutes, 42, 43 minutes.
43 minutes. I think I read that as well.
Yeah. So like he's had a great start. He's probably been, if the season ended today and you were calling for a player of the year, it would, I don't know if you guys agree or not, but I would say it'd be Kuhn. It's certainly been the most consistent across the 4 games so far. So it was good to see the injury wasn't a major impediment to his ability. The one thing I would say is he does still do that thing where he kind of keeps, like when he's coming across, he keeps waiting for that perfect angle. And then, like if he could find that top corner, like he would be basically Arjen Robben, because that was something that he always did. Was he'd come inside and again and again. But then Arjen Robben would then find the postage stamp on either side or in the bottom corner. He would always find the corner. So if Kuhn could add that to his game, he's our next big sell, if that's the case.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I've sort of been impressed by with Kuhn that was a problem sort of back in the last season and even, potentially in pre-season is decision making and when to release. He's still, to your point, Sean, he's still got a bit of that because there's times where you're going just shift it and shoot, and he wants an extra touch and he's looking for kind of perfect opportunity. But on the goal, I just thought at other times he might have taken an extra touch or held on to that a little bit longer, and he just seemed to weight it perfectly in his, in terms of the time he took, but then the pass was perfectly weighted as well. And AJ's coming in like a steam train. 1-2 in the end, actually. So AJ plays it out to him. Not a traditional 1-2 in terms of amount of touches, but yeah, just the 2 players involved. And it's a great finish by AJ. Just he takes 1 touch to get out his feet and smashes it in. So at that point, it's pretty much game's done and dusted. We make another few subs. Obviously, Odin Thiago Home comes on for Bernardo for a sort of 15-20 minute cameo. Anthony Ralston comes on for Taylor. So I don't know if that was a mixture of Taylor just protecting him because he's booked and he'd taken a reasonably heavy challenge. Now, hopefully, as I touched on at the top of the show, we are going to solve this left back cover issue this week. But again, a damning indictment that our backup right back is having to come on as our sort of backup left back in the match. And Ralston actually has a chance to score an absolute screamer, but he just gets a bit under it and sort of tie into the stand instead of being bent into the top corner, but he's capable. And then the big one, I guess, for sub is it's the 89th minute, but Francis Turley makes his full competitive debut at 18. And Rogers had some good comments about him sort of post-match. I guess with everything that we hear and think about in our youth development, it's another good one to see a kid coming in and getting some first team minutes. Shane.
Yeah, agree. And it's a little bit of a good news story after obviously the Daniel Kelly situation and a few other departures recently. We've got another one that's come in and he looks a player and he looked very promising in the preseason games that we saw, so it's good to see that when he's played there and, been given an opportunity there, that he's shown enough for Rogers to say, we know what we want to have you as part of the first team squad. And I think something that we've talked about on a few of the programs, both on this one, but on the Pot Noodle and the Thursday sesh, try and say that when it's very late at night, after a sesh, is that we want to see more of the youth team players come in and be given opportunities so that they don't go elsewhere. So I think it's really exciting and good luck to the boy. And he did well, in that very small cameo, got on the ball a fair bit, was involved a little bit. And he is hoping we can get him some more first team appearances.
Yeah, I thought he was more disruptive than constructive, to be honest, but that's fine. That's an aspect of games that you need to show. And he looked very physically developed for an 18-year-old, which means we're even more confident giving him a chance at that point, right?
Yeah,
I wish I was that physically developed now, and I'm in my third decade.
He's got good stature. You can definitely fill out, obviously, but he looked like he was happy to mix it. And yeah, on the few touches he had, his passing was crisp and confident. But yeah, as you say, he was willing to put his body in and sort of win the ball back and get involved. And the comments from Rogers about him were really interesting, and it's sort of a bit of a veiled dig at some of the younger players that have left, in that he talked a lot about patience in young players and sort of, between 18 and 21 at a club the size of Celtic, you need to show some patience if you want to be here longer term. And we've touched on this show, and you guys, I'm sure, touched on it as well. Is like, I think, you can. There's an argument on both sides of the coin. If you want to be a Celtic player, you probably have to show patience as a youngster. If you're not that bothered about being a Celtic player and you just want to be a player that gets games as young as possible, and it's a short career and make some money, then by all means leave at 18, 19, and go to League One or the Championship, and you will make more money, and you will probably get more first team minutes. But will you potentially hit the heights that you could if you just have that patience and you're good enough to get through? We talk a lot about there being no pathway for youth players. I hear that all the time, and I've got to fundamentally disagree with it. If you're a good enough player and you're developed well enough and you're capable, there's going to be an opportunity for us. We know that we won't spend silly money constantly. So if players my view is, if players are willing to be patient and make good decisions and go out on loan, take those opportunities to get first team minutes that way, and then be willing to come back, then I think if you're good enough, you'll get game time. I think what we've seen is a bit of impatience from some younger players and agents in their ears, and the riches that are offered elsewhere, or comparative riches offered elsewhere. So I think Roger spoke about he having patience, being delighted to sign a contract and sees his future here. So he's sort of encouraging that's the attitude you need to have if you want to make it at Celtic.
Yeah, it's not like these players are pitching up in the English Premier League after a few years. The one we went to Bayern Munich, or two of them did, but I think it was Liam Morrison, the centre back. Pretty sure he's playing for Wigan or someone like that now. So we had youth players coming through in the past that were getting a game in the EPL after they left us. Craig Beattie, Ross Wallace, for example, had quite a good career with Burnley in the top flight in England. None of these players that are coming through and leaving early, I shouldn't say coming through, because they're not coming through. They're leaving early. None of them are finding that level. So I don't know if they're being well advised at all. And I would say that, having watched the occasional B team game, nobody's really stood out. Sometimes occasionally I'll watch a game and an opposition player will stand out, but the Celtic B team games, I don't really. It's pretty poor, pretty rare that someone kind of stands out. Mitchell Frame, maybe the only one that stood out for me when I watched games last year. You could argue Carse as well, but Daniel Kelly didn't stand out to me. None of the centre backs stood out to me, even though we were really struggling for centre backs at that point. I was like, you cannot play these guys; they'd be disastrous. Yeah, so you're right, Paul. They're not good enough. They need to. If they want to be good enough, they should try and develop under our system. And then they might be at some point.
I think the B team 5th tier Scottish football thing isn't the right option. Sounds maybe people consider me a dinosaur, but I think if we could get some sort of reserve league back that isn't just capped by youth players, but it's predominantly going to be youth players, certainly for Celtic, and players coming back from injury, that would surely be a bit more competitive than mixing it with teams in the 5th tier. But I don't think there's an easy fix on this. But certainly the players that are on the cusp, to me, they should be either going out to lower league in England teams, or SPFL if an SPFL team will take them. Because then you're really going to see if they are they developed enough to play at that level. You see other young players getting a game because that's the option. Like a guy like Lennon Miller at Motherwell, 2 assists yesterday. I don't know how many games he's racked up now, but he's only 18 and he's played most of the last season and he's a first pick now. So
he was injured for most of last season, but he was in and around the team for most of the season. I think the obvious solution is to try, and I don't know what the administrative blocks that this would be, but the obvious solution is to try and get into the reserve league in England, because I think the most development we've seen in players was when we were basically arranging friendlies against the EPL teams, reserve teams. So I think that would be your best solution. I don't think we're going to get even a good enough quality reserve league in Scotland.
So one thing, I go back to the game. One thing I wanted to touch on was set pieces in Matt O'Reilly's absence. So obviously Matt takes pretty much all the free kicks and corners, and in his absence, we saw Bernardo take them from the left to in swing, and we saw Greg Taylor taking them from the right to swing him in the first half, and I think second half JT got ditched and it was just Bernardo. I thought his delivery was really good. There was a couple in the second half which they were better than O'Reilly's deliveries in terms of the trajectory and the loop and the area of the pitch, that the box they were hitting. So yeah, I just thought that was an interesting thing, because you kind of, in amongst all the other heartache of losing Matt O'Reilly, you sort of forget that he's your main set piece taker. But I guess we haven't been that prolific from set pieces, so maybe it's not as big a loss in that area. I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting one to touch on. I don't know if either of you got any thoughts on it.
Yeah, look, I thought Bernardo's set pieces definitely stood out in comparison to Greg Taylor's, that's for sure. I thought Greg, unfortunately, his set piece delivery wasn't the best. A lot of times he sort of hung it up towards the back post, and it was just too far. It was just beyond anybody, and they had to really scramble. Whereas Bernardo looked like he was hitting some good areas, and it'd be interesting to see if they continue to hone in on that now with Matt no longer being there, and actually start to work out some set piece routines around his delivery. We might be able to become a little bit more prolific from corners, because it's something that isn't really in our arsenal at all, is it? So if we could develop it, particularly as we get into Champions League football and so forth, we're going to need to make sure we score from limited opportunities, and set piece opportunities are like gold, and we need to get better at them.
I think we've been saying that for years and years. I remember most of last season, Sean and Anthony and I were having a similar discussion. So let's. I said we'd come back to Ida, so let's touch on Ida just briefly. Probably two schools of thoughts on this. One is got himself into good positions, didn't quite finish them off, so promising but rusty. The other is, Jesus, how have we spent nearly 10 million on him? And I think if you hadn't had him for the 6 months last season, you'd probably be in that latter camp. But I think hopefully most of us are going to be relatively measured, because we know what he's capable of. But yeah, just first touch, second touch, not really that as good as we remember, and that's potentially because he hasn't been with us for preseason, which sort of makes the negotiation tactics even more stupid. But Sean, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Mostly looked at rustiness. The two chances that it did fault him in the first half were both on his left foot, and he didn't look very strong or balanced on his left foot. So hopefully that's something he can kind of work around. So there you go, perfect timing. Robert Gibson, Ida's left foot has the strength of wet spaghetti. Do agree. That was a good chance where he's 1-on-1 with the keeper, and he really should have lifted it. I think what strikers might have done, some strikers actually open their body and try and use the right there, but I think he's just mentally not quite up to speed yet. I would also say the conditions probably played a part, because when Kyogo comes on, he was even worse. He was pretty poor, to be honest. There's one where he just puts it, like, he just try to play a pass and he just launches it out of play in no one's general direction. So I think, not going to give him too much of a hard time, since Kyogo was even worse. And I'm happy. I'm not going to pass it. He's got enough body of work behind him to buy a few rusty performances to start.
I think it's a massive cliche, but it's absolutely valid at this point, given he's late to join the club and probably hasn't had as consistent a preseason as you would want. It's just minutes in the leg. It's minutes under the belt, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity for that. But I'd sort of like, I guess, put a glass half full view on it, in that he was making really good runs. We were finding him. There were timing of those, pretty much all of those runs were perfect. He was onside, for the most part. And yeah, just didn't quite, there's a couple that shot off his chest, and, his first touch maybe took him a bit further away than you would like. But yeah, once he's up to speed, you would expect that it would all start to click. But I guess the sooner he gets his first goal under his belt, that will obviously help him. Other performances, either of you want to sort of touch on on any other players you thought had a good game?
I'll just quickly say, based on what you said earlier, Greg Taylor I thought was poor, and actually thought he was about to get hooked. Not totally poor, but like under standard, below standards. And I thought he was getting subbed regardless of the yellow card, because it happened immediately, indicating that the fourth official already had the substitution card. So I don't think it was a consequence of the yellow card. And I thought Scales had a great game. Apart from the block you're talking about, I thought he just had some really good, really impressive and brave decision making all around on the ball. So I thought he was great.
Yeah. Sure.
I just wanted to highlight AJ. I thought AJ had a really good game as well at right back, and he's involved in all three goals. You know, that first goal, he's part of the build-up, and then he makes one of the runs into the box that drags away a defender. The second goal, he plays the ball over the top to Maeda, who knocks it down for Hatate. And obviously the third, he plays it out to Kun and then makes a lung-busting run into the box and buries it. So, you know, apart from his goal scoring or goal contribution, be it scoring, second assisting, or just making a run, I thought he was very solid as well. And, you know, I think he was someone that we looked at towards the end of last season going, well, he hasn't quite hit the heights of when he came in under Ange. But this season, you know, him and Greg, to be fair, I think Greg's been pretty good up until yesterday. He and Greg Taylor have been good, but I thought he was very good again yesterday. So just wanted to highlight AJ's performance and impact on the team.
Yeah, both valid, and a couple of ones that I thought we'll come back to player of the match as we do. Actually, let's do it now. Let's do it now because it's a good place to do it, and there's a couple other things we want to touch on. So we'll do it now. I will go last, but I don't think it will be a deciding vote based on how we've summarised other players. But there's one name that seems to be conspicuous by its absence. So I imagine we'll be unanimous on this one, but we'll wait and see. Sean, do you want to tell us your player of the match and why?
I thought it was a close run between McGregor and Hatate, but I'm going to say Hatate. He just had a bit more. I think that finish is outstanding, and it was one of his best games. And I think he had slightly more influence on the game for me, the outcome of the game, even though McGregor was great in the attacking and defending side of the game and really took charge. I think it's between those two, but I'll say Hatate.
Good man. Shane?
Yeah, it's Hatate for me. I agree with Sean. I thought McGregor was fantastic as well, and he's been in tremendous form since the start of the season. But Hatate was just fantastic yesterday, and I felt like everything, particularly in that first half, was going through him. It felt like he was crucial to everything that we were creating up front, and all the chances, even the half chances, felt like he was pretty much central to everything. And I thought he was tremendous. Goal, obviously, we've waxed lyrical about already, but just his ability to sort of take on that I guess more of that Matt O'Reilly role and push himself further forward. We know exactly how he can play. We know he likes to bite off passes that others sort of maybe hesitate at. But he was tremendous yesterday. And yeah, I felt like everything good that happened to us, particularly in that first half, and even looking back at the second half as well, it felt like everything good that we created, he was either a critical component, a part of it, or he was still on the periphery but contributing. And I thought he was absolutely tremendous. So it's Rio for me.
And me, spot on. Yeah, look, I thought it was all action. Yeah, everything that he did was really positive. You know, we know he does positive stuff, but quite often he coughs up possession and, you know, and takes, you know, silly risks and other bits and pieces. And there was hardly any of that. I thought it was as good a performance as we've seen from him in some time. And the goal was obviously just a tin lid on it. So yeah, excited to hopefully see him maintain that level. That is another criticism that's potentially sort of fairly leveled at him, is that he can hit these heights and sort of drops away again. So I really hope he can put a consistent season together. And if he does, you know, he's going to be a superstar. He'll be another one that we'll be arguing over the fee for, I would say. But, you know, certainly hope that I don't see there's any chance of him leaving this window, but hopefully that's not famous last words. And I guess on that, so unanimous on the player of the match, which I thought we would be. Yeah, McGregor definitely on, you know, solid under the radar, really good at breaking up play, I thought as well. as his attacking stuff, and usual metronomic stuff, passing and moving it around the pitch. And we touched on AJ and Scales as probably other top performers. I think AJ actually on certain platforms was getting man of the match, and I guess to your point, Shane, he's involved in all 3 goals, and a direct assist and a goal might nudge him ahead on some people, but I know Sean's not one for just rewarding that kind of obvious stuff. So I think Hatate, for his overall performance and contribution on the stuff that's harder to measure, he on the eye test for sure, he was man of the match for me. So obviously, given the time of year it is and what's due this week, it'd be remiss of us not to briefly touch on Rodgers' post-match comments, most of which that press conference was around what will be happening this week around incoming transfers. We've obviously not got long, and it'll be touched on in other shows in more detail, but I think we should have a chat given some of the news that's broken today. How are you guys feeling generally, and what's your thoughts about how the last few days of this window is going to go? And also in relation to Rodgers' comments, I guess, specifically.
Look, I think it's been talked about to death over the last few months. It seems to be picking up a little bit this week, but I'm just a bit annoyed that it's taking this long. I remain annoyed. Under bidding down on Engels, which is the same thing that we bagged out Atalanta for doing to Matt O'Reilly. In the end, we saw with Matt O'Reilly, the reason they did that was because they had an alternative that they knew the price of. So I can only imagine Celtic are bidding down on Engels because there's someone else that we know within a price range that's around about then. But that wouldn't make sense to do this late in the window unless you're incompetent or just really don't care what other people think and just going to do things your way anyway. Yep, I saw the video of the fan interaction between Lawwell. I don't know if you've seen that. Where Lawwell just said to him to calm down. No, we're not calm. We'd be calm if we're actually poorer as a squad than we were at the end of last season. Now that Matt O'Reilly's passed his medical in Brighton, so we are not calm. And if we don't get at least 3 players in this week, I think there's some questions to be answered.
I think that's fair. I'm going to say that I think there will be 3, potentially even 4. I'm feeling reasonably upbeat. It's interesting that the manager's comments across 2 or 3 press conferences in the last few days have been so widely and wildly interpreted differently from various parts of the fan base. You've got people over here saying, he's had enough. He's not confident of getting anything. He's just calling out the board's bullshit. And then you've got another school of thought, which I sit in, which is he seems pretty calm. He's pretty calm. He seems pretty confident in general that he's going to get signings in. He's been really transparent, particularly the post-match press conference, he said, it's taken too long. And he wasn't explicit that recruitment needs overhauled, but it was easily implied. And he's mentioned also that everybody in the building has been doing a great job and working hard, but he's also mentioned that needs fixed post this window. And I feel like obviously he won. If it was a battle between him and Mark Law and the others in that recruitment team, he won that one. He got his way on that one. They're going. I think the bigger criticism is that they haven't been properly replaced yet. And that's, I guess, what he's talking to in terms of that. But I'm confident that he's had a really frank discussion and is expecting reinforcements in. And the names that are coming out over the last sort of 6-7 days for me are the right level of candidate and certainly should make a meaningful difference to the squad. So yeah, whether they all get done, I guess I'm trying to, again, glass half full. I think better late than never. Let's see where we are come Saturday morning our time. But I think we could see 3 or 4 in the door. And if they're in the positions we need, then I think we can be reasonably confident that we should have a good season ahead. Anything to add, Shane?
No, I think you guys have covered off pretty well, though. With regards to sort of how you were talking about the Roger's comments being interpreted as frustration with the board or being comfortable and just sort of usually being himself. I sit halfway between the two. I found the comments they seem to be a little bit more pointed than I was expecting. I know he's very transparent, and he plays up the media role a fair bit. Let's be honest, and he does like to get some quotes out there. But just the one I was listening to yesterday post match, it seemed quite pointed, and even the joke about the phone ringing, the mobile ringing in the press conference, and asking whether it was Nicholson's phone, like that. It was funny, but at the same time, that just felt like with that, along with the other comments made, it felt a little bit more pointed, kind of a I think it will happen, but also it better happen. Now, I'm not saying he's going to up and leave or anything like that, but it did feel like a little bit of a point at the board saying, I have trust you will deliver, but I want to make it clear that I expect it. It's not a hope, it's an expectation. So it will be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm of a similar thought that I think we'll get a couple of names in. And as you said, Paul, a couple of the names we've been linked to so far are exactly the kind of players we'd be looking to bring in. So that's a positive at least. But I'd be very concerned if we got to the end of the window and we hadn't made any more additions, or at least hadn't been able to bring in the additions that we're currently looking at. And I'd be concerned not just about the fan fallout, but maybe something a little bit more. So, like I said, not saying he's going to up sticks or anything like that, but it may not be all happy trails between board and manager, put it that way.
That's fair. I think last point on this is I would say there's nothing that he said in public and to the press and by extension to the fan base that he hasn't said to the board directly. So I think he'll have been consistent in that messaging. And he plays up to the media. You're absolutely spot on. Like the stuff with the joke about Nicholson and, tell him to shut up and all that. I think it's just like, it brings a lightheartedness to it, but it's obviously super serious. And I think you're right that those discussions have been had. And you would, that's why you sort of expect that things will have to get done. So yeah, we'll see where we are, but I'm glass half full at the moment. I'm prepared to go absolutely mental this time next week if that's not fair. But I've been espousing all close season and into the start of the season that I've been practicing some sort of transfer market zen, and I have done a really good job to maintain that to wherever we are 4 or 5 days from the end. So I'll continue to do that for now, and fingers crossed we get them in. There's a lot of negative energy being expelled by a lot of people on something that might not actually end up coming to fruition. So we'll see. That's probably us for what's happening this week. We've obviously got Champions League draw. I'm sure that'll be touched on later in the week or early next week, which is exciting. Really, the new format will be great. Sort of even mix on games. We've got a massive derby match to come next Sunday. I'm not even going to ask. I expect we're all feeling pretty confident given how we started the season. So hopefully we can get a great result there. But we'll be back, or I'll be back with 2 other guests next Monday to discuss that game. Keep them under wraps for now. We'll finish up like we always do with our weekly recommendations. Shane, what have you got for us?
So, music recommendation for me, it's good to actually be on a program with you because both you and I love talking about music, usually as our final thought. And so something that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, to be honest with you. I have been very much listening and enjoying the most recent release from Post Malone. And this is the country-inspired Post Malone album. Now, I'm not a Post Malone, obviously more into rap and R&B, then transitioned to a bit of pop music, and now he's done a country album. And Post Malone and country aren't really things that are necessarily that I'm into. But heard a couple of the singles a few weeks ago, really enjoyed them, and thought I'd just give the album a listen on a whim. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the album from start to finish. It's a long album. It's about 18 tracks. Most of them have guest appearances from those in the country music world. And we're talking everybody from, the likes of Brad Paisley all the way through to Dolly Parton, who makes a guest contribution on the track. And it's a really enjoyable album. And like as I was sort of saying before, country music's not my thing, but I've really been surprised how much I've enjoyed this album. So Post Malone, it's called F1 Trillion. Even if you're not into country music, even if you don't think you're into Post Malone, definitely give it a listen. I think you'll be surprised how much you enjoy it.
Sounds like he's Post Malone.
Yeah. That one was laid on a plate for you, Sean. Well done, mate. Well, yeah, it's not my wheelhouse either. Although I'm partial to a bit of country. Johnny Cash, has been a firm favorite of me down the years, so I will potentially get to that in a little bit. I've got a lot on my listening rotation at the moment, and a few gigs coming up, so I always like to get my homework in for those. Sean, what you got for us?
Yeah, simple one. Netflix, Exploding Kittens. Quite enjoyable. A lot of the jokes are very niche American, but but it's irreverent. It's satirical. Some of the jokes absolutely buckled me. There's some parts where I had to like pause just to laugh out because I was just missing what was happening. I couldn't stop laughing. So yeah, it's good. If you like that sort of thing. Exploding Kittens.
Exploding Kittens on Netflix. Thank you, Sean. So my weekly recommendation is nearly always music and occasionally some telly or a film. I'm managing to do both this week with the same act. So I touched on these guys towards the second half of last season on a couple of singles that were flying around. And then that rolled into their second album being released just after the season finished, actually. So I didn't have an opportunity to do that then. So yeah, second album came out in mid-June. The band are Kneecap from West Belfast. Basically created their own genre, Irish punk rap, mixing the Irish language and English language. And yeah, bringing the party and a bit of a political conscience. I think it would be right up the street in terms of a good chunk of our support. The second album's called Fine Art. Well worth a listen. If you are based in Australia, they're on tour here next year. Got my tickets already. They're playing Fremantle on St Patrick's Day, which should be a cracking show. It's a Monday, so I will be taking Monday and Tuesday off work for that particular week. I'll be using
the Wednesday, Paul.
No, well, I'll probably manage to drag myself to working from home on Wednesday. But yeah, I'll be needing some life leave or RDOs for those 2 days. But thankfully, I've got a bit up my sleeve. So yeah, looking forward to that. So Kneecap, second album's called Fine Art. They have also got a movie out this week, I think, in Australia. One of the independent cinemas in Perth is showing it. Unfortunately, on my wife's birthday this week, so I shall not be in attendance. I think it's currently the only showing in the metro area, so I'm not sure if it'll get more love. But yeah, the movie's called Kneecap as well. It's essentially their origin story, and they're playing themselves. Michael Fassbender is in it as well, and it's had really good reviews through the film festival seasons up in Europe. So if you get a chance, look out for Kneecap, both on tour, on streaming, and in your local theaters. Thank you, gents. That is this for us. That is us for tonight. Thanks to everybody in the comments. Thanks to Shane, who's been running the comments on my behalf. Looking forward to a really, really big week. Hopefully it's a positive one for Celtic. And I'll be back this time next week to cover the derby. All that left to be said is hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
How?